Well, it's 5:15 p.m. sharp, so we will start. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Professor of Cybersecurity Jarno Limnell here in Aalto University. And we are not going to talk, at least not much, about the cybersecurity today or in this public lecture series what we are just starting here in lecture hall. So I want to welcome you both here in this lecture hall and you all who are following this live stream. For example, I know that in Mikkeli Ammattikorkeakoulu there are many followers for this public lecture series. The reason why we are organizing this lecture series here in Aalto University is actually very simple. I think one of the key trends in our society, more or less in the whole world, today and in the coming years is digitalization. And in this lecture series, we are not talking about so much about the security risks or threats. We are concentrating on the opportunities what this digitalization is providing our societies, our businesses, and our daily lives as well. And I'm very pleased to say that we have excellent speakers in this public lecture series. There are eight lectures, and in each lecture there will be 2 different lecturers. And we will start actually with very topical issue if you have followed Finnish news during this afternoon. We are talking about digitalization of the traffic, mobility as a service. And we have Elias Pöyry from Eera and Sampo Hietanen from MaaS Global, who will, I can promise you that in advance, will give you excellent presentations. So without further words, please, Elias, floor is yours.
Thank you. Like Jarno said, today is a historical day. We have made progress in the legislation concerning the digital transportation services. I'm going to go through the short agenda quite smoothly. First, a few words of what is digitalization and why it's the big deal. Mr. Elon Musk is said to be the key person in the Silicon Valley at the moment. They're saying that while other people are designing nice apps for older kids, Elon Musk is the person with the mission to save the world. What it means is that he's concentrated in 2 key things to give us some more time. They are transportation and energy. And then he has a 3rd project of when the world is not enough about the space. So Elon Musk is trying to solve the problems of energy and transportation that are key to as well as starvation, as well as logistics, as well as pollution, to all the wicked problems in the world. So what is digitalization then? The digitalization phase 1 was about doing the same things we've done before, but with a computer or with with internet. Now we are moving into the world of digitalization 2.0. What it means? It means like when we had DVD player, there was a production system for the DVDs, delivery chain for the DVDs, shops that sold them, and so on. The digitalization is about taking the both ends of the story, just the end user and the actual product, the movie, and taking everything off from between. So digitalization is the enabler of totally new kind of processes in our world. And we must not forget the real-time feedback loop, because what it does, it lets the end user to control the actual product that he or she is using, as a company or as a person. So what's driving digital transformation in transportation sector? Well, there are three key things. First, increasing demand. Megacities emerge, GDP is growing in developing countries as well. There is congestion, lack of adequate space, lack of parking, so on. And this all causes pollution. Pollution that causes climate change and pollution that is very harmful to our health. Pollution actually kills more than traffic accidents. So how do we come up with this pollution issue and these difficult, wicked problems? Well, there are new technologies that emerge. And actually, if we talk about the digitalization of transportation or digitalization itself, we can say that all megatrends of technologies actually are about digitalization at the moment. There is not a single megatrend that wouldn't be reliable on digitalization. So which technologies evolve and at what time? That's the question we don't know direct answers. But what we know for sure is that digitalization is the key to solving these problems. And then we come to the solution. So first of all, I'm talking about the servicization. Sampo will continue about his company, MaaS Global, after me. So what the services are bringing and why the services are the key. They're not just bringing to A to B, but actually they're bringing a user experience that we like. And the user experience is the driver why we want to buy transportation as services. The second thing is democratization of societies. When we end up in a situation where not everyone has to buy a car, but they still get the same service level, the society is democratized. And the third thing is the resource efficiency. So when we are not buying cars and we are not putting our all financial assets into cars, there is space to do more. So these three drivers make immense financial impact. And do we like these services? Well, according to studies, we really do. We want to have transportation on demand when we want it, at the level we want to have it. And, well, the investors have realized it. So the money is flying in to new companies like Uber, Lyft, also to the newly born MaaS Global in Finland, and several others. And the investment funds are not the only thing, but also the traditional businesses believe that there is a big business. So what it means is not only the car company, not only the investors believe in the business, but also the car companies believe in the business. So the car companies say that they want to have a share of this money or most of this money. And what happens in the business, there are big players like Google who say, we want to have all the business. And then there is the public society, cities and governments who say that maybe the transportation services should be a commodity instead of being a business. Well, that's a value decision we have to make in our lives. The second solution to the wicked problems solved by digitalization is the automatization of transport. There are 5 layers in it. The red line describes where the legal structure of our society lets us go at the moment. I am driving a car which drives by itself. Today, when I came from office to home, I used the autopilot function. No hands. I admit doing some SMS messages as well. So I was in the middle of the level 3 of automatization. Well, when is the situation where the car drives by itself and comes to me? It's a good question. Usually the technology trends are a bigger buzz in the beginning and not that fast moving. But when they actually arrive, the change is really, really fast. I believe that in somewhere 2030s, we have cars that come and pick us up without us driving them at all. Will they be on every road? Definitely not. Will they be available for everyone? Definitely not. But they will exist and they will be in Finland as well. So I said that there is a huge business involved in the digitalization of transportation. On the other hand, the studies show that we should have much cheaper transportation services than we have at the moment. So where is the business then? Good question. The third layer of digitalization in transportation is electrification. And what electrification means, it means that we're not just changing the engines of the cars to electric ones, but we're making a bigger change. It reduces emissions, enhances the new energy system, reduces oil dependency, and builds new growth businesses. So is this digitalization or just the electricity, or do they have something to do with each other? Well, let's start by thinking that we would use traditional cars in the automated fleets. We're talking a lot about biofuels, and we are saying that we are saving the climate through biofuels. But actually, it's just calculations. The tailpipe emissions of a diesel car, which is using biofuels, is just the same as it would be if it was using diesel fuel. So biofuels are a calculation method to say that Finland is doing their part in emissions trading scheme. Actually, the production of gasoline is even with the terms of the car industry and oil industry calculations. It's more polluting than the production of electricity for an electric car. So this is the one angle to look at the electricity, but the electricity is not only about fueling car. The electricity will start in about 2 years when the mass market cars, the family-priced, family-sized electric cars with 400 kilometer batteries come into the markets. This is just 2 years, so your next car might be electric. So what these cars enable, first of all, they need services, they need charging. And if you thought that you just plug it in and you get the electricity, well, technically yes, but the electricity amount that the car needs to move, it's not just the Schuko plug on the wall. It needs heavier electricity, security systems, and so on. And when you get more electricity, someone is asking, who's paying for it? Your neighbor? Definitely not. So the infrastructure and ecosystem of an electric car is very much about digitalization of transportation. These companies also exist in Finland, like Virta, which I am also working for. But the big deal about electric cars is that this year and previous year, all the electric car manufacturers have brought to the market systems where the electric cars can be used as an energy storage. Storage where you can keep your cheap energy that you charge during the night, but as well a storage that helps to stabilize the energy network when there is, for instance, some peaks of demand or peaks of supply, for instance, caused by the wind power or solar power or so on. These kind of peaks usually last for half a minute to 1 minute. So a charging event occurring, you don't even know that they used a bit of your electricity to make the electricity network safe and stable. This is not utopia, this is services that actually exist today and that are already on the markets for electric vehicle charging networks and energy companies. So, how does the future look then? Is the transportation going to be digitalized? I would say that it's not one phenomena, like I said about the technological megatrends. There is no one trend like digitalization, but digitalization in transport is including all aspects of transport. If we think about electric vehicles, if we think about automatization of vehicles, if we think about transportation services, mobility as a service, these all phenomena emerge into one thing. I asked a few minutes ago, what does it mean if we have cheaper service and at the same time there's a big business opportunity that everybody wants to be a part of? Well, to close my presentation, I would say that we should think more about what is a digital service, what kind of services we use, and where do we put our money. The price of a traditional car is only 20% of the total cost of ownership of a car when you compare it with the fuel cost that's like 80%. In Finland, car taxes make this equation a bit different, but technically this is the truth. And as with the electric vehicle, the energy cost is only 20%, and at the moment the vehicle is very expensive. But when we enter the year 2025, for instance, it might be possible that the cars or vehicles are produced in factories that now produce dishwasher machines. And the prices of cars might be on a commodity level. Will they drive themselves? Probably. Will they be on connected fleets? Yes, for sure they will. At least most cars will. Will they work with electricity? Well, could you think of a diesel car going to get some biofuels from the Shell station and refilling itself? Well, hardly. So the future is about digital services, and the vehicle in this value chain is only a minor part. And now I'd like to give the floor to Sampo that will tell the major parts like the mobility as a service, as a business. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elias. And before you leave, I know that you have a plane to catch. I think we have the opportunity to ask a few questions, and I will actually start, because when I was listening to you about this technological change, all these issues, facts that you were giving us, I think we are talking about more like a cultural change here, changing the people's mindset, how we think about these issues. Am I right?
That's absolutely correct, and at the same time we must be very cautious. We say that, okay, young people don't want to own their cars anymore. Well, that's a trend that's happening. Several percentages change, like Sampo will tell in a short time. But on the other hand, there are things that we don't know that happen in the future. Maybe the cars will become so cheap that everybody wants them, maybe. So there are several cultural phenomena going on, and we don't know the future. We just know the direction we are going to.
Very good. Questions to Elias? We will use the mic so the live stream will catch your questions.
Okay, thank you very much. So you mentioned that about 20% of the costs of the car is just the car, the vehicle itself, and 80% is the fuel. What happens in the future? Now the roads and streets are maintained out of the revenues which come from the fuel. How about electricity? Could electricity prices go so up high that the road maintenance can be supported?
Well, that's a good question, and I have answered the question before. Unfortunately, our tax authority has plans, and it means that our taxation of transportation, it's like a Pandora's box. You can change the things inside the box, and you can a little bit do like this, but the tax level we get from the transport will surely be at the same level as it is at the moment. The liikennekaari, the new legislation, is suggesting the infra company for taking care of the roads in the future, and that might be one solution, but unfortunately, in the end user always pays.
Other questions to Elias?
So one question about the network effect. So nowadays there are many petrol stations along the roads, and filling up is quite easy with conventional car, and also with electric car. I think the utility of the product the consumer receives depends on the amount of charging points. So how are you planning to address the network effect? So how to increase the number of charging points, and how to make the product attractive for the consumer? For example, if somebody wants to travel to somewhere in the northern Finland.
Well, to answer the latter part of your question, I suggest you take a train or a plane. But to start with the charging stations, because that happens once a year, and it's much more comfortable and cheaper to travel, and at least with a train more environmental friendly to travel than with a car. When you talk about the electric cars charging stations, the companies like Fortum and Virta are building their networks all the time, and they have very good networks already in countries where there are electric cars like Norway. But the question is, how many charging stations can you build without any usage? Because the stations don't stay in good conditions if they're not used. So we have invested more than our share to the charging station if we compare it with the quantity of chargeable cars, which is now around 2,000 in the whole country.
Thank you very much, Elias. We will take one more question, and then we will continue with Sampo.
You said that many companies are working on increasing the number of charging points, but is there a standard charging port for the cars that will be used in all charging stations?
Yes, there is a standard. It's in the Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Directive. That's actually the national implementation will be introduced 3rd of October to the Minister of Transport. So this is a very timely question as well. And there are like several standards that will emerge into one or converge into one in a few years. But yes, in every charging station you can charge every car, except Tesla, that has the technology that's, next generation. So you have to have a next generation car to charge that.
Thank you very much, Elias.
Thank you.
And we will continue with the same theme, mobility as a service, and great honor to welcome Sampo Hietanen from MaaS Global. Please, floor is yours.
Thanks. My name is Sampo Hietanen. Since this is streaming, let's try this once again. I'm being called the father of the concept mobility as a service. I've given way over 1,000 speeches, and so far nobody's been coming out of the audience and kicking me for saying that. So let's hope I get to claim that still. Phenomena that I've been glad enough to see from beginning to wherever and how big it is, and let's see in my presentation. Big days for the whole phenomena. Today, Transport Code in Finland was out, which is a big enabler for the whole digitalization of transport. I think we're making the new rules, the new legislation for how the digitalized transport should look like. But I'll start it with a bit of a story. It's an evening lecture. For me, how the whole mobility as a service became live, and I'll reveal all my secrets by the end of the lecture, of course. About 10 years ago, a bit over 10 years ago, I'm a transport engineer myself. I was working in a civil engineering company, and I was trying to think, so what will happen to transportation in the future? By that time in Finland, everything was about mobile. Now a bit less, but then everything was about the mobile sector. And also about data. We talked about ubiquity and all those things. And I started thinking, okay, so what would happen? What would happen if we'd have all that data, which wasn't actually available back then? And what if I were to get all the transportation that I need in my cell phone, just like that? And I thought, maybe that's not enough. Maybe I'd need to get it somehow. And yes, in being in Finland, the comparison with telecom is easy. So what if you were able to get your mobility, your daily mobility, and you would buy that just like you buy your mobile subscription? And that really got me thinking. Really, look, there's something in it. And actually, if that were true, then lots of the structures of the modern transport as we know it would be quite different. But because it's an evening lecture, I let you close your eyes as well and think about it a bit. We've got young people, but also a bit older people, so let's see how this goes. How many of you have cars? Okay, it's a smaller percentage than normally in these. So for the remaining minutes that we have here, try to come up with the same thing that I tried to figure out, and at least have been trying to figure out for 10 years now, is what would it really take for you to give up that? What would I have to promise here for you to do that? Personally, not in a big picture, but just yourself. Because I think that's where it all starts. What type of a package would it have to be? For me, it's pretty hard. I'm a father of 4 kids. Lots of things, lots of logistics and all of this, so it's going to be hard, but it still might be doable with some of these packages. And you need to think about it from a different perspective than what we have now. Like I really like the idea of a 15-minute package with a guarantee within 15 minutes you're good to go. I'll show you that sometimes dreams can come true while you actually put it. There's a nice story behind this slide because this picture or the illustration of this has been pretty much everywhere in big newspapers and so on. And it actually, I made that for a lecture in Aalto University. I think it was maybe 6-7 years ago to a big audience like this. And I thought, I'll just make up and lie. And I made this and said, look, these types of subscriptions you will have in a few years. And I had the prices and I had everything over there. And of course, well, I thought that I was bluffing nicely, but then a professor came to me afterwards, after the lecture, and said, Sampo, now you got it all wrong. And I started blushing and going like, oh, now he got me from the lie, and I have no evidence to back this up. And then he went for this one price. I said, the price in your second package is wrong. It should be at least 30 euros more, otherwise you won't be able to cover all the expenses in it. And then I did this, because bought it. And it's strange, sometimes an illustration tends to do a lot. But to move further, it's not enough to just have a nice subscription. I think where you have to be is you have to think about, why do you all have cars? And my claim is there's this thing called freedom of mobility, which is so strong in our minds. I mean, there are a few phenomena. I heard from one of the questions before that we'll have to make a cultural change. I don't think so. I really don't think so. There are a few things that we just have to cater to. We want the freedom of mobility. We want to be able to go anywhere at any time. Second trend that I'm pretty sure of, we really want to be lazy. And if you can bring those things together to a product, to a service, then I think you're onto something. Because I really admire what Henry Ford did with T. Ford. Brought something simple, affordable to people for them to fulfill the dream of, I could go anywhere. Me with 4 kids, I never do, but I could if I ever had any time to do that. And then kept on from that. And if we can provide this, then we must be onto something. But it means that you have to have what in IT you call SLA. So it's not about the A to B. It's about all the A's and all the B's. Because that's where we make the biggest decisions. So, does it have any meaning? At least that was, for me, the big thing, because I've been in transport, and all the friends that I have in telecom were saying, well, transport's a small thing. And we here in telecom, we're the big ones, and transport's just the one small item over there. So I started looking at it, because they always talk about this thing called ARPU, and how big of an issue this whole thing is. And saw that, look, there's a lot of stuff over here. Things that don't work, but at the same time, it's a huge market. They always talked about this, that our ARPU is this and our ARPU is that. But now if you look at the consumption, transport is the second largest consumption. In Finland alone, I think it's about 19 billion annually that you all spend in mobility or transportation, which is quite a lot. So if I were the operator of your mobility, whereas the telecom operators, including all the sectors, they get roughly about 30 euros a month out of your pocket, I'd be getting 300. It's not bad. So 10 times the amount as the whole telecom, and the change is quite similar to what happened from 80s to where we are now. Now I don't have to talk about that mobility and transport is a huge and hot topic in the world. Look, it was 2 years ago and way before that, I had to go in front of everyone and say, look, this is where everything happens. Look, this transport and mobility, that's where the big things are going to happen. Now everybody knows with Ubers and Lyfts and everything popping up that, yeah, it is a hot topic. And I think had I been here in the year 85 and I would have said that, look, this telecom will be a hot business sector in the years to come, I think I would have been left out. So these things do happen. And I think what we're looking at is, if you look at it from another perspective of sectors or fields of business that have been digitalized, it started from the smaller ones. Now, the big ones, the big dinosaurs are still left there. And the biggest consumptions are housing, transport, food, I think health is fourth. And now it's time that even those fields will be disrupted. My normal way of looking at this is that it goes in 3 steps. First, denial. 10 years ago, when I gave a speech about mobility as a service to a bunch of people in transport, I would say that they were in denial, or saying, internet, transport do not mix. Nothing to do with us. Yeah, nice, but nothing happens. The second phase would be that you keep the same structures, but you try to somehow turn the screw a bit and do things like that. I think that's where we are mostly in transport right now. Then the third phase is when it hits you. That's when the structures change. Someone will do it in a totally different way and make the most out of it. And for the players that exist, that's when the shock is. If you look at media, banking, any of them, that's when it starts hitting. And now I'm in academia. Let's try this again. I challenge you, and please raise up if you object or you have a better one, because I've claimed in quite many places now that for the next decades, you have to look at where could we get economic growth into the world. It doesn't come from bankers, we all know that. It comes from some sort of innovation. Digitalization tends to bring productivity, but there has to be a field big enough where it can do that. So you look at transport, and you look at the numbers. So 10 trillion, how many trillions it is, it's a huge, huge market. Second largest consumption. Out of that ARPU, that 240, out of that 300, 240 roughly, huge chunk of it is based on you owning your own cars. And that car is used 4%. So you have to give me that there's at least potential in that of productivity gains. And now we're starting to see the first phases of that. That's why Uber is so valued. That's why all of them is, because there's just a huge potential, money in people's pockets for getting around, a lot of money, and at the same time, lots of underused assets that it's being based on. Why people are willing to, why you're really willing to ridiculously overpay for having a means of transportation that you don't use, is because the dream of freedom of mobility is such a huge issue. I'm willing to do that because I need the reassurance that I can go anywhere at any time. Now if you can do that in a different way, and I'd say the enablers over there surrounding, they exist, then things just might change. I like this picture of sort of new ecosystem of business. You have all these means and these things over there, and sometimes you need to draw the ecosystem again. What we're lacking is, and what is coming, and what you can expect years, actually even now, but growing amounts of this is that you will have your mobility operator bundling everything up. If you look at digitalization in other fields, this is quite a normal phenomena. Someone will bundle up all the good things for you. You're probably not going to have 50 or 100 different mobility apps for your daily mobility. Do you really think so? I have about 50 to 100, something like that. So you have a taxi app, or 2, 3 in some cities, more. You have Uber, you have Lyft, you have Car2Go Drive now, you have the public transport, probably 2 or 3, and then you just want to go to your friend. And do you really think that you're going to take all of these apps and compare these things? Definitely not. You just want someone to fix it. And that's what's going to happen in this ecosystem. What's going to happen is that now everybody in this business takes their service, their silo, all the way to the end user. They have to build up. Every single one sells you their ticket, their transportation. And it's pretty easy to see that there's a totally new layer of business, which is much more international, much faster, much more brand-oriented, design-oriented, is the one that bundles everything up for you. That will happen, and it's already going on. And now it seems that everybody's trying to find their places. My prediction, 3 ways that this can evolve. It can go the way that just somebody takes the whole dominance, just goes on. You can say the big G word here if you want, taking over all the customership and then pushing all the transportation that way. It could go the way that city takes more of a role or governments take more role. I would argue that you can try, but they're not going to be as customer oriented that they'd never be able to do this. It will not be international, so I don't really believe that. Now the problem is, and this is the difference between telecom, is it's so big. I don't really think anyone can control and start doing the transportation. I can, and I'm running a business now doing this. And if I'd have a business plan saying that, yeah, we go to London and I'll need public transport and I need taxis, but I don't really like those players over there, so I'll set up a new underground and I'll set up a new taxi system and do all this myself, I don't think I'd be scalable. So it has to be roaming from beginning. Unlike in telecom, you can't control the whole value chain. It's an ecosystem thing where kind of everybody has to take the leap of faith at the same time. So that's tricky. But at the same time, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. One way or another, it tends to be that the consumers get what they want, or at least what they deserve. We already see that the mindsets are changing. Why I like to use the car share as an example, it tends to be the place. Car share has been there for tens and tens of years, and you can marginalize this and say, well, it never took off. No, it didn't. It didn't before somebody really got it big enough. If I use the Drive Now example that I know, you have to go the way that the consumers like it. Okay, I don't like to reserve it, I don't like to return it, and I don't like to look for it. So how do you do that? Go to Berlin, spread 1,000 cars around and say, okay, take it from anywhere you find it and return it wherever you like. That's it. And boom, it started going. And now it's a really huge and booming market. You also have to think about it a bit differently. Everything outside owning your own car pretty much goes from production. It sells you the production with an idea that catch me if you can. If there's no coverage, well, what do I care? Here's my bus, here's my taxi, here's my these things. Not many go the way that people actually live their lives with their pace, how they feel about this. If you don't believe me, believe the money. Just out, I think it was this week or last week, ABI research came out that this, and this is great because the whole MaaS as even a term and as a concept, it's from Finland, and they use mobility as a service, and they say by 2030 it'll hit 1 trillion. I think it's going to be even bigger, and I only want 30% out of it. I'm quite fine with that. Don't say I'm not modest. So things are moving in this space. Elias showed you also some of the slides how the investments have found it. You can always argue that the investors that put money in Uber, they're dumb. There are thousands of them, but they can all be. But there are so many others. And normally the investors will get some bright minds, and it's a hard time saying that they're all wrong because so much money is going into this. And even the car OEMs are seeing this. You can see them lining up like this, finding solutions. It's a convergence of the IT or telecom and the car manufacturers and how they line up for the new ecosystem of this huge market. I'm in a happy position being asked as the father of MaaS, going anywhere to talk about this. So I get to see the things, initiatives happening. Great that we're moving really fast in Finland, and Finland can be the forerunner market showing off, a lab if you want, for showing how the take-up could be and so on. But there's so much going on in the world. Honestly, also so big problems that need solving in big cities nowadays that you can't solve with the idea that everybody owns a car. That arguably will have, by 2018, I would say we'd have MaaS in big growth in most of the areas in urban environment. And this is coming from someone I was asked 2 years ago for talking about the concept of MaaS. I think it was, I'm not sure, but I think it was USA Today who asked, so when do I think that someone will be able to buy mobility as a service for real in some place? And I said, I know transportation, it's a bit dinosaurs, close, and there are technical hurdles in this, so I think 2020 and beyond, and then it will move on. And I'm so glad that I was wrong. It's sometimes things move way faster than you can expect. If the enablers are there, there's enough money to be grasped, and it starts going for the future market shares, things start moving. And I'm actually amazed by the speed now in transportation, having been in that field for all my life. Why public sector? Well, it's a big change. The Finnish government tends to use this word, they want to be enabler. Sounds great. Of course you want to be, as public, you want to be the enabler. But at the same time, it bears a lot of change in it. From now, public sector has taken on many parts of this. Public transport, they do the infrastructure and they do all of this. And now if they want to enable markets, that's a totally new and different attitude. Because now all they have is if they want to solve some problems in transportation, the only tool that they tend to have is, well, plan it, tender, project. That's all. But in a world that looks more like telecom, they don't do that. They look out for the markets, they do licensing, they make incentives, they make sure that the consumer rights are met and so on, which is a totally new ballgame. But it has the ability to maybe make the policy goals without the expenditure. When I go to cities, for example, and they always say, yeah, we want this, we want mobility as a service, so what should we do? Should we do something like that? The minute you put a tender out, you've missed it. Because then you go on choosing the winner, and that's not going to. Or you go and you put some parts of the value chain in it, and that's not the way to actually do it. But it does need a big mind shift. I've discussed with many of the authorities, and it is hard. It takes years to overcome the ideas, but still they don't have all the tools. It's great that transport code is out. At least we're going there. We're moving that way. And it is a tough environment because there are lots of silos. Many of them have to be one way or another broken, but at the same time, it's not so huge than we expect. I go to these places and then I talk to people and please raise hands. Nobody's objected yet, which is strange. And when I talk to normal people that are not experts in transportation or like that, many times they just look at the thing of, okay, that's the subscription. Yeah, I get it. I'd like to get my mobility like I do my mobile. I get it. And then the question is, it's pretty simple actually. Why isn't it here yet? That should be doable in a modern world. And that's pretty much the only thing that they ask. When could I buy that? And then when I talk to the experts always go, you can see it in their face, they go, oh, that's going to be so hard. It's going to take a long time. But gladly I get to retire before this happens because so much work in it. That's what really drives me, is to see that the consumers tend to want this. The experts find it hard. I think we've seen so many fields of business that feel that way, and then all of a sudden actually the change is much faster than they expect, and probably they should have thought about this when they knew that it's going to happen. Sometimes you underestimate the change in that sense. Okay, I promised to reveal everything you have to do. I've been fortunate enough not just to talk about this for, over half a year, at less than a year. And I've been running a company, founded a company called MaaS Global, which is actually the world's first mobility operator in the world, to try this out. I mean, I thought that everything can be done by the desk, had been done, so you have to go out and really try it out. Lots of risks, had no idea if it's doable, many things. But at least now we know much more, having designed it with lots of users, how it should be done. And the secrets are, you have to go from ownership to experience. There's a huge difference when you ask a 40 plus how they feel about transport. It's like, yeah, but I want to own my own car. So will everybody else. And then you ask the 20 plus that you actually should be asking when you talk about trends, the young urban 20s. And they say, oh, I don't want to own a car. It's so much hassle. I wouldn't even like to drive too much because what I really like to do, it disturbs my gaming. It disturbs my social media and all of these things. So I'd like to just be someone handle that for me. And it's about the experiences that you can bring. But then, and this is crucial, because it's not the system approach that we as transport people tend to always do. It's not about that. It has to be better than owning a car. And this is a tough task because it's one of the biggest success stories in the history of business is the car, the dream, all of this. How do you beat that? How do you beat the user experience? How do you beat the service level? How do you do that? Is it even doable? I'd argue, yes, it is. Not to everybody. Not at the beginning. We're not. We're actually quite okay with 5% of the population in urban areas, which is already a huge amount of people and a lot of money. Still beating the operators with that money. So it doesn't have to be, but it has to be at least for one person better. And now the big question is for this is everybody in transport is big. But none outside owning a car has been able so far to do a complete set of mobility to at least one person. So you'd have to do at least one person where you can say, look, I can be your operator. I can take your monthly mobility and all of it. If you're there, then you're in a different business than the transportation from A to B. So that's what we've been aiming for. It's not about trip planner. Everybody's all about data. Data is important, but then you have to ask yourself, and trust me, I've set up businesses for transport data. It's important, yes, you can do that. Now you have to ask, who is it important to? We think that, having good data for transport is a B2C business. If we take the analogy from telecom again, how many of you would like to see a live disturbance map of the telecom network in Finland? You would. That would be great. Good that we have at least one. I don't care. I have my operator. They should know. It's important they have that data, but I really couldn't care less. Just fix the connection. The same applies here. You know the ARPU of transport data. How much do you spend for transport data? Not that, but it's close to zero. It's not 300. It's important to have the data, but you have to remember it's only the tool for it. Don't try to push that too much. I'm a big believer in monthly subscription. Why? Because it takes away of the pain in the service of, well, it's a night time, now I want to go to my friends or bar, but now with this thing I don't know if I can, and I have to think about the prices and I have to think about these things. If you take away that thing, because that's one of the cool things about car, you don't really think about the price anymore once you bought the huge money out of it. It has to be few clicks, has to be fast. It really has to go instead of a button. If you want to be an operator in that. So, I said that a few years ago, I thought that maybe 2020 and beyond. Now, with me and this MaaS, I've set some goals of maybe it's a topic and so on, but so far, all the dreams that I've been able to somehow even have in my mind, they've been exceeded. And so is with this one. So now, what if this would be for real? And I said it's pretty good timing as well. I've been able to do less than a year now in a company that does that, and we wanted to find out the essence of freedom of mobility. And we actually used a lot of money, lots of consultants and everything in it. It was actually one of our crew, Jonna, who came up with a service name that would best describe the whole service. It's WIM. I mean, because the thing is not about your commuting, your weeks. The essence of freedom of mobility has so much more to do with weekends going on a whim. The idea that, oh, look, a thing popped into my mind and my operator will cater to that need. I need to be able to go on a whim, not just to plan everything, because it's not enough. What we really want to do is make sure the competitive what we can do. Much less hassle. Ooh. More free time, because eventually that's the selling point. We spend roughly about 90 minutes in transport every day, and now think if you could get all that back. What would you do with your 90 minutes? What would you really like to do? And the business will definitely go fast into that one. We have to give you the freedom of mobility and at the same time make sure that the cities benefit and you're not a polluter in this. Strange enough, no money's been spent on marketing or design or everything. The whole mobility as a service phenomena has been running on the fuel of people getting excited. To me, actually, I'm a pretty cynical person in many ways, even though I might look happy this way. But it sort of makes me want to believe in the world again. I mean, phenomena is going out there, said to be trillion by this. Everywhere in the world, they're pushing for it. And at the same time, there's no conspiracy behind it, no lobbying, none of these things. It's just people getting, hey, this I'd like to do. Lots of people getting to the movement. And at least for me, that's something to believe in a good world. Last Friday, well, we were able to actually make this happen already in June. Last Friday, we started pre-sales. So yes, you can actually buy WIM from now on. Check it out, wimapp.com. We can't take all the people that we'd want. We'll take a limited number of people with a huge, huge discount at this stage. We'll try to figure out the way that we can, at this stage, actually make it happen. We know we still have a long way to go to the dream of giving you a global coverage of whatever you need, anywhere, anytime, and affordable enough. So we tried to cater to at least enough many people that we could fix their monthly mobility in a way that is suitable for them. With the tools that we have, because there will be lots of more tools. We will have lots of more Ubers, lots of more Cardigos, DriveNows, and all of them. and lots of more new things, new pieces of the puzzle that will make the picture much more beautiful in the future. But it is kind of a fulfilling time for me. Transport got out today. Last Friday we started sales. I just actually looked the figures before, and it's booming. We're going to have to do something because there's just so many subscriptions coming on already, which kind of tells me that we must be on to something because people want different solutions for their mobility than what they have now. I can show you a film if we have time. It's a minute film. It's right there. I don't know how to do it because even though I run a techie company, then I, of course, cannot do this. But at the same time, you can imagine what would I have to promise. If you have good answers or if you have good objections or good questions, we still have a few minutes to take them, I think.
The WIM app makes going places easier than ever. A monthly fee covers all your journeys with everything from buses, trains, taxis, brand new cars, bikes, and more. WIM takes away the hassle of traveling. It has it all: planning, routing, and tickets. You can create a monthly package to match your needs or just pay as you go. So how do you travel with WIM? It's simple. Enter your destination, and WIM combines the best transport options to take you door to door. It tells you when it's time to go and shows your moves on a map. The more you use WIM, the better it gets. It remembers your favorite places, syncs with your calendar, and plans your journeys in advance. Still, WIM is as spontaneous as you are. Fancy a film at the last minute? Grab a cab on a whim. All you need to do is press one button. Once the taxi arrives, just show your ticket and enjoy the ride. It even rewards you for making green choices. WIM frees you to move whenever and wherever you want, but it also makes your city a better place to live with less traffic jams and cleaner air.
Why I actually wanted to show that one was the last bit of it. Because if you pay us a monthly fee, it makes sense for us. If you use public transport, you walk or you bike, well, you know, it's money in our pocket actually, because you're not spending as much money as we calculated with the high things. Your modal split is nice for us. So it makes sense for us to give you a Tesla for a weekend if you've been a good boy or girl in this sense. In my case, it was being a good boy, or a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. So whenever you drive with style. Because one question that I did not have time, that I forgot to ask, how many of you have your dream car? Huh. From almost 80% to 0. Well, that's one of the reasons we should have MaaS, and you should buy WIM.
Thank you very much, Sampo. I have to ask you, how many of you, honestly, think that you will try this?
Wow!
Wow! You have so many new customers. But on the other hand, I really have to say, Sampo, that what I especially liked, your whole presentation was excellent, but I really liked it that you brought this issue to the very personal level. I really started to ask myself, I'm 40, what would mean to me to give up my car in order to use this service? And there's a huge step in my mindset to change my car and start using this service. I'm 40, like I said. How long do you think that it will take to change my mindset in this issue?
You're not going to be the first movers, sorry to say. You're not our target. Target's a bit younger.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm over 40 myself, and I'm not the target, which is tough. I'd say it happens like with many of these new things. It's the young urban ones that are easy adopted. They're not even, they haven't bought the car yet. They're kind of car hesitant. They'd have the money, but they'd want to go. And once there's enough of them, they will they will get the mass big enough so that the service is reliable and it's big enough that the supply is good enough so that it starts tickling you. With people over 40, well, some of them have second cars. And that's pretty easy to give up. It's the first car that is. So there are ways to go about it. Secondly is you probably are already suburbanized. And that's not as easy as sort of closer to the center because the supply isn't there. So we have to move gradually. The more of supply there is, the better the service will get. So it's not just us that are gaining in this. It's the taxis, the public transport, the car rentals, car hire, car share. If they don't grow, we don't grow. So it'll take a year or two.
Okay.
We'll convince you.
I will call you after a few years. Questions, comments, recommendations, new ideas to Sampo?
Hi, I would like to ask you the question that this all is very focused on ground transportation like cars and trains and buses. But how do you see the air transportation, which is also growing in the context of all this, like in MaaS?
People tend to get what they want. That is, as I said, I've been lecturing about this for over 1,000 times. That is maybe the most frequently asked question, to be honest. So I don't think it's going to take a long time before you're able to have a subscription for Europe, period, including everything, ferries, planes, and all of this. Of course, at the beginning it will be a costly thing, but because it's a dream, wouldn't it be? Wouldn't it be great to have, look, I've got everything, I can live everywhere. So at some point it's going to be, and we already are starting, in the US you have these monthly priced companies that are quite affordable. So it's coming as part of it, definitely.
Thank you. How do you see the transportation of goods and heavy material? If you have to work, you have to carry heavy tools and it's not regular. Is there available kind of trucks or similar?
I'd say we have to include everything that touches the person. I think the big freight lines are already quite effective and they're digitalized in many ways. There's definitely much more that you can do in that, but there's a big change going on in everything that logistics that touches the human being. The food deliveries are getting huge. We know Volt and the others that are in that space, delivering stuff from you. The stores, IKEAs and everything are starting to do that. And of course, we'd like to get that as part of the offering as soon as possible because it's those, well, I shouldn't use this, big excuses. I have to say I used this one, translating it from Finnish, and I used buts, meaning not the thing, but the big excuses that you have for having your car, and we have to tackle every single one of them. If we cannot do a complete set, when you go to IKEA or a store like that, we have to cater to that need. We're not saying that you shouldn't have a car. You can, like you saw in that film, take a bigger car when you need it, and we just make sure that you get it really easy, conveniently, and fast.
What about, Sampo, security? What do you think? What are the main risks for this service?
Well, of course, there is a lot of data in this. To serve the person, we need to know where they are pretty much all the time to dazzle them in that sense. Good enough that there's actually others who think about this so that we can just tap onto that development. Security in that sense, I think also there's a question of ownership of data that might be a bit different in transportation in other fields. At least our philosophy is that, look, if we're selling you 300 euros worth of service, you can own the data as our customer. We don't need to somehow secretly behind your back try to make more money out of it. You open the API to whoever you want. If there's a coffee shop that wants to make a service that they'll provide 6 o'clock every night, they'll provide you wherever you are. cup of your favorite cappuccino, you open the API. That might change a bit of that thing. Lots of security issues where I'm not the best expert. Could we have a great CTO?
Good. I think we have time because Sampo have to go to the next event. He's a very busy man nowadays, as you can see. One more question or comment to Sampo. Okay, I think we will thank you, Sampo, very much for this excellent presentation. I really enjoyed your picture about the digital tsunami. I think that was very well said.
I actually took that from Jorma Ollila. He said that first, so I have to give the copyrights to him.
Okay, thank you very much.